Hello, this is Adil Bantahar, an associate professor at the University of Delaware's English Language Institute and the School of Education, and you are listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
The EdUp Accelerated Excellence podcast is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EDUPXE15OFF. Learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
Welcome to EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And today we're speaking with the founders of EdUp The Experience, a podcast that turned into a podcast network. It's the little engine that would, could, and does, with the founders, Joe Sallustio and Elvin Freytes. So gentlemen, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to allow you to give voice to your names and to introduce yourself to the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community.
Go ahead, Elvin.
No, nice try. You see, this is the partnership we've had for over 5 years. Nice try, Joe. You're on, dude.
You know what? Let's do this. When I was in college, I hate to say it, but when we did start taking of adult beverages, E&J was one of those. So we're going to go with E&J. Elvin.
E&J, I like it.
That's awesome. Well, first of all, Jacob, thank you so much for having us. Thanks for being a part of the network. Love the show. Love what you're doing. We're super excited that you're happy. And this is rare occasion. I think, Joe, maybe we've been on 1 or 2 podcasts together. Not sure. This might be number 3 all time over the last 5 years. So this is a rarity. But yeah, for those who don't know me, it's Elvin Freytes, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, which is a part-time thing, by the way. It's not a full-time thing. My full-time job, I'm a vice president of higher education at Pangram Labs. And so I've been doing podcasting since 2019. And we started the EdUp Experience in 2020. I worked in higher ed over 20 years, a bunch of different institutions, nonprofit, for-profit, small, big, private, you name it, admissions, residence life, recruitment, all different departments. So, we've published over 1,000 episodes, and actually 1,100, I think now we are, which is crazy. Over 260 plus college university presidents have been on. I think we're the only podcast in the world that has so many college university presidents on. That's part of our college president series. We also wrote a book, Commencement in Education. And we have podcasts all over the world. Right? There's a funny story in Qatar. Maybe Joe will tell that story about Qatar when we first met. And it's been an amazing experience. Hence the EdUp Experience. So I'll kick it to Joe.
Jacob, thanks for having us, man. It actually, the last time, Elvin, that we were on a podcast together was episode 1000 of the EdUp Experience, which wasn't that long ago. December 16th of 2024, we published that. But then before that, it was the book 2 years before that. So it's very rare to get us on at the same time, because either you're producing something or I'm recording something. Oh, by the way, we have day jobs. I'm the VP of Industry Engagement at Ellucian, obviously co-founder of the EdUp Experience podcast, and your host, where we make education your business at the EdUp Experience. And, the over 23 years in higher education at the C-level and working in small and big colleges, online, on ground, now moving over to the ed tech world, which is a little bit different, but same. And boy, what a journey, Jacob, this has been to have such great creators in the network, seeing people like yourself and others go and create extensions of the brand. To have, you think about the number of people that have something to say in higher education, how hard it is to engage everyone, and to see the EdUp Experience go from our 1 podcast to now 24 network and affiliate shows is pretty incredible to watch. So we're just glad to be a part of the ride sometimes, and we do so much of the recording and producing, but very infrequently do we get to guest like this. So I'm pretty excited.
So I'm gonna let you guys sit back and then just enjoy this ride and this experience of EdUp Accelerated Excellence. So if you could, let's go back to the genesis. What were the conditions that led to the founding of EdUp, the experience?
So the story goes is that in 2019, I started podcasting. I was listening to this guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, who was telling everyone he's like a marketing guru. And I was listening to him on a podcast. He basically was saying, now's the time to start a podcast. And I said, okay, sure, I'll start my own podcast. So I started my own podcast, and I was just doing my own thing. And I was working at a university, and somebody pitched me a product. And I said, I need a reference first. Let me get a reference. And sure enough, they introduced me to Joe Sallustio. And we got on the phone, we started talking. And I just remember thinking, I like this guy. This guy's pretty cool. I like what he's doing. And we kept, in touch.
Damn straight.
And obviously, go ahead.
I said, damn straight, I was cool.
Was. Man.
Yeah, no.
Now,
still is. Yeah.
This is sounding like a marriage. It's sounding like a marriage.
5 years, man. 5 years of this. Imagine that. So then, coming to find out, he was doing some podcasting too, which was I thought was interesting. He was involved in the podcasting world as well, and he convinced me to have him come on as my first guest. Which again, I didn't have guests. I was just doing it my own thing, and I said, sure, why not? And we got on, and it just connected. It was so cool. Very similar background in higher education, for-profit, non-profit, family, kids, all that good stuff. So I was like, yeah, this guy, he's cooler than I thought. That's great. So I think he brought me on to a podcast he was doing. Joe, you can talk about that part too. And then, I had this idea to kind of do something, and I said to him, I sent him a direct message on LinkedIn, and I said, hey, I have an idea for the side gig. And I think, if I remember correctly, Joe, he said, I don't care what it is, I'm in. I was like, okay, exactly. I knew I liked this guy. and then I said, listen, I think we should do a higher education focused podcast. And I was looking at the market, see what was going on. And back then, there weren't that many higher education podcasts, number one. Number two, if they were extremely boring and dry. So I said, why don't we do everything opposite of what's in the market? And we really didn't have a plan other than that. And we just kind of iterated over LinkedIn. We never met in person. And we iterated on LinkedIn, and we came up with the name, and we came up with the idea of asking the same question at the end, what do you see as the future of higher education, getting all the responses, writing a book, which we did. So it's pretty incredible that we did all that before we even recorded. And when we did record, it was on our phones. We recorded on I think Joe was in his car, and I think I was in the closet of my little tiny apartment, because that's where it was quiet. And so we honestly had no idea what we were doing. We had no clue what we were doing. We just went in and started. And that's what was listening to this. Please just start. Don't worry about it. Just get going and figure it out and iterate as you go along. And so that's basically the genesis. But Joe, you should fill in some spots there. I think I missed a couple of things.
Yeah, I was podcasting at the same time. I was finishing my doctorate right there in December of 2019. So leading up, as I was getting through my dissertation, I had all this time open up, and it's true what they say. You get the lull, right? You're doing all homework all the time, and all of a sudden you have all this time back. And so I was looking to fill my time. And so I was podcasting with the company. I can't even remember the name of it. It was like a contract podcaster, and I started getting a taste for it. I kind of liked it. So I invited Elvin on to the podcast I was hoping, and then it just sort of took off. We had a back of the napkin a business partnership for 2.5 years before we actually created a company and got an LLC and all that, because we thought we're just be podcasters. We're just going to podcast. Nothing's ever going to happen. We're just going to, maybe we'll get invited to speak somewhere. Maybe we'll go to a conference. And then somebody said, well, can we sponsor your podcast? And we were like, how do we take money? Like, how the heck, what are we supposed to do with that? Do we, then we started going through all this, like, we got to create a business. We got to do these other things. So it sort of manifested itself. And from the day we started the partnership, which is in December of 2019, we didn't meet in person until 2021, the summer of 2021. somewhere in Doha, Qatar, of all places. Can you believe that, Jacob?
Yeah, it actually is interesting because, the world is almost split in half now. Pre-COVID, post-COVID.
Yeah.
So this is your pre-COVID, and then coming out and through COVID, you guys meeting and meeting in person. But this just talks about when things are meant to be, the stars will align.
Yeah, and it's funny because we were in Doha during the middle of COVID when we met for the first time. And I remember when we were, Elvin, you remember we were trying to exit the country and we had to go in a big conference room and we had to just sit in a chair in a waiting room, and there was hundreds of people in there and they were calling you up one by one to clear you so you could get back in the United States. It was crazy, a crazy experience. But imagine that, having a business where you don't meet your business partner for basically 2 years. And all that goes into that, right? There's a high level of trust that has to take place in an agreement like that, because you have expenses and you have dollars and you are spending money. I always say that in the EdUp experience, I am the lead singer. Elvin is the bass guitar player, the lead guitarist, and the drum, and he's playing drums at the same time. He's doing everything else. I just get to look, good on the microphone, but really he's doing all the hard work.
So,
but I just want to jump in. But the thing is that's the thing about the partnership that it works so well, is that's what we talked. We talked about this, and I said to him, like, you out in the front, go do your thing. I'll be in the back. It's so good, and it works. Because a lot of times I feel like people get into partnerships and they work together, and there's not clarity there. There's not transparency. And I think for us, that was always from day one. Like, yeah, you do this, I'll do that. And we're happy with it. And it's been working great. And one of the things that talk about COVID that really helped us is that we started, I think the first episode dropped, remind me again, Joe.
January 25th of 2020.
Yeah, January 2020. So then, we're trying to figure out, how do we get guests? How do we get people to come on? What are we going to do? We had no idea. Again, so we said, you know what, LinkedIn, let's just double down on LinkedIn. Let's try to reach out through LinkedIn. Sure enough, March came around, COVID, so everybody was home. So we started reaching out. Yeah, and then everybody said, yeah, I'll come on. Yeah, I'll come on. And it's funny because I think about that. I don't know if we would have been so successful if it wasn't during that COVID time, because maybe it would have been really hard to get to these decision makers that we wanted to have come on the podcast. I mean, we had the first president, which was what's his name, Joe? From WGU,
Scott Pulsifer.
Yeah, would we have gotten him if there was no COVID? I don't know. Who knows what would have happened? But it's been an interesting ride to see how they were so accessible via LinkedIn. Whereas before, when I worked in higher ed, it was like there's so many people guarding these folks, even the deans. You were a dean too. That the people guard. They were like these gatekeepers saying, no, you cannot get on the calendar. Whereas back then, I'd just go straight to the president, and Joe too. We just go straight to whoever we wanted to come on via LinkedIn. You want to come on? Yeah, sure. Let's do it. And I think what really helped us too back then is the website. We got a website going, and it's part of the business and all that stuff. So that was a huge benefit. And we were just different. We wanted to have an organic conversation. And I think a lot of higher ed podcasts, they were very structured. Here are the questions. Here's what I'm going to, and it was more like a webinar or a presentation or a conference or a panel. We said, no, we just want to talk about higher ed. What's going on in your world? And then remember, we were asking a lot, are you okay? How's your family during the COVID time? And that's how we made a lot of connections. And also we were more focused on quantity. We just want to get as many people on to tell their stories. And so I think that at the beginning kind of really made us very different from whatever everyone else is doing.
I want two things I want to add to that, though. I think that was also a time when folks needed community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that knock on the door, that ask, was an opportunity for people now to really have another way of engaging. So it's almost like when the school principal, I remember when I was working in teacher preparation, and I would set up this arrangement where the students could interview the principal, because I wanted them and they got to interview different people within the system, because I wanted them to get a big view of education as a system. And so the principal would say, I only have 10 minutes. And I would say, just be mindful that once he or she starts to talk, that 10 minutes will turn into 30 minutes, because people often don't have this time and space, or are asked to really talk about what are the thoughts about the work that they do, it's often usually solving problems or sort of forecasting. So it's always the business talk, but not the heart talk of what I feel and think about my work. So I think that's probably 2 ingredients. But how did you guys know when you met your stride? What was the defining point that you knew that you were really onto something and now things were in an upward trajectory?
Boy, I don't know, Elvin. But before we answer that, I would like to, can I open this up just a minute, Jacob, and tell you a quick story about our first meeting, which I think sets the stage for in Doha for how our partnership has evolved. So I want to paint a picture for you, Jacob. So imagine taking, in my case, a 16-hour direct flight from Los Angeles at the time to Doha. All right.
Qatar Airlines,
which, by the way, is top notch. I mean,
next level.
I was drinking on-demand Macallan 12, no problem. So I get there, all right, at like 7 o'clock at night, and I don't remember what time I left, but I do know I didn't sleep that much, and so you're completely twisted around. It should be 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's 7 o'clock at night, and so I go to sleep, I think at 2 in the morning. I slept for a couple hours, and we're supposed to be at this convention center the next day, which is where the podcasting booth was. Beautiful convention center. I mean, you want to talk about like gold-lined convention center. Massive, probably the nicest convention center I've ever seen. So we get to the booth, we're set up, it's 8 in the morning, right? So I've lugged over all this podcasting equipment, which I have flown from Los Angeles to Doha, Qatar with, right? So it's like a backpack, it's 50 pounds, microphones everywhere, it's heavy. So I get there in the morning, I haven't slept, I'm sweating my behind off, and I'm like, I don't even know what's happening right now. I don't, no one's there, I'm setting up, I don't know what's going to happen, who's going to be a guest. So people start coming over, there's like a I don't know, an ombudsman or a liaison that's like, oh, here's your first interview. Who's your first interview? So I start interviewing people in person, on ground, right? And Elvin's not here. I haven't heard from him since the day previous, but I do know he's supposed to be in Doha. He's gone. So 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock goes by. Now I'm starting to have those moments where you have an out-of-body experience where I see myself podcasting. I'm so tired, and like I see myself podcasting, asking a question, but my other part of my brain is somewhere else, and I'm drifting off, and still no Elvin. As lunchtime comes around, it's like 12:30, and I'm outside getting lunch, and I'm like literally pouring sweat just from having no energy, and I'm eating, and I get a text from Elvin saying, hey, I just woke up. My alarm, I forgot to set my alarm, and I have been sleeping all day. So as I'm shoving the pickle or whatever I'm eating sandwich in my mouth, cursing him out, wondering what the heck is going on with this partnership. And I get back to the table. It's like 1 o'clock. The next podcast comes up, and here comes Elvin walking in his, shirt, his pants, looking fresh, like he's slept this whole time. Hey man, he goes, hey man, sorry I slept in. I don't know what happened. I am like cracked out. My eyes are purple. I'm sweating. I'm like, oh, no problem. And I will forever hold that against him for the rest of his life. And there you go. And that's how we knew it took up.
No, well, in my defense, the story is that the alarm did not go off. I put it on, it just did not go off. Something happened. It was in my defense. But to get back to your question, Jacob, I think what, in my view, what I think what really's got made us think that, oh wait, we got something here, is when I was reaching out and Joe was reaching out to potential guests, and they were saying, yeah, we want to come on, and it just kind of started to snowball. It's like, wow, we got something. A lot of people want to come on. And not only that, but then they were enjoying their experience. They're like, oh, wow, this was a fun. I remember many times, Joe, like after the recording would stop, so this was fun. This is great. I really enjoyed this conversation. Wow, I had a good time. You guys are doing a great job. And that's how I know, I was like, oh, we got something. we got something. Because again, we were different. We were having a conversation. We were having fun. It was organic. We were talking about higher ed. There were no gotcha questions, none of that good stuff. And I think people felt very comfortable with that environment. And it was like, take your tie off, take your jacket off, just relax and just have a conversation. I think that's when we knew, wow, we definitely had something here.
I think too, we had to turn people, we had to say no at some point because we had so many guests that we were putting out episodes 7 days a week. And I was recording at one point as I was hiding from my boss, 2 to 3 podcasts a day, like one in the early morning, one at afternoon, one at lunch. So at some point we had to just go, we can't do it anymore. That's when you knew we had something, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're just a podcast machine at that point. So your episode is part of a series that we're generating around the role of media and marketing. So how do you see podcasting as a tool in media and marketing, particularly for EdUp the experience, for the advancement of educational equity and or excellence? So how does it lend to this idea of educational excellence?
Elvin, I think that's your question. I mean, you're the guru here.
Well, I mean, we have a podcasting conference coming up. Not sure when this is going to air, but I don't want to date it. But it's a podcast. It's first of its kind, and it's for higher education only. So it's for higher ed folks. Although we may open it up to K-12, it's the first one. So let's see what happens. So hopefully, if people want to learn more, higheredpond.com, and they can see all the details there. So we'll be talking about that too. We'll talk about strategies about podcasting, how to use that to basically meet your goals. Because I believe that if you use podcasts strategically, you can really meet your goals. So whatever it is that you want to do with it, like for example, if you want to use podcasts in your classroom as a faculty member to teach, you can use that. You can do that as well. That's a very small example of how to use podcasting as a medium to kind of teach, right? Or you want enrollment. So you want enrollment. You can create a podcast, right? You could try to have those who are referring your students on. So you can get admissions counselors from high schools. You can get career counselors or whoever they are, principals. Get them on, create a relationship, and then boom, that's how you kind of get into the idea of recruiting students. Or there's so many ways. Or if you're a college president, you want thought leadership, you create a podcast and you get people on. Or you can do your own thing. Talk about what's going on in your community. Talk about the day in the life of a college president. What is it? What kind of meetings are you doing? Things like that. So it all depends on what you want. I think that's the key, is that people have to figure out the why. I always say that. It's like, what's your why? Why do you want to start this podcast? And if you know what that answer is, then you can kind of use it and do whatever you want with it. If you want to get a lot of downloads, you can buy downloads. That's not the big. We get pitched all the time. Hey, I'll give you 1,000 downloads or 10,000 downloads for like $50 or whatever it is. But we don't buy those stuff, of course. It's all organic. So because again, we want to get as many people on as possible, tell those stories, and we want the higher education community to know all these different stories and to know all these different amazing projects and initiatives that are happening. And they can say, hey, listen, I can bring that to my campus and try that on my campus. And that's a huge win for us. If someone says, I heard it on the podcast, we're going to try it on our campus. We really like that idea that this small school is doing, it's going to be at this community college, or this big school is doing, it's going to be at a private college or whatever it is. So I think that's a big part of it. It's like, what's your why? Figure that out, and then use that, right, and strategically to get what you want.
Yeah, so start with your why, and as you mentioned that as an educative tool, the podcast could also be used to engage students.
Yes,
you can have students on your podcast, or create their own podcast, or on your podcast as well. So,
Jacob, if I could just add 2 quick things. I think that higher education is emerging in its acceptance of podcasts as professional development. Mm-hmm. And if you actually think about accelerating excellence in education, you have to be discovered, right? So if you have something you've done that's excellent, and you've done something excellent on your campus, and it's something that needs to be shared with the world, how do you get it out? If you go to trade publications, unless there's some angle maybe a negative angle, it doesn't get out. It just doesn't, right? Because we want, as humans, and reporting, journalistic reporting usually has a tinge of negativity toward it. Like something happened something bad happened, a school closed, this president left, there's controversy, so on. Podcasting allows a university, a host, a person who has a topic to get a message out in a one-to-one basis. And it's one-to-one with every person that listens, right? So it's directly in their ear. It's not something they pass by or, quick message on a phone. It's something that really you're listening to, and it goes beyond the marketing message. It provides in-depth analysis and emotion tied to these things that we do, and in particular in higher education. As you know, the noble work that we do to serve students, sometimes it should be celebrated and it's not, right? And that the public perception of the value of a degree is a consequence of us not telling appropriate stories, marketing stories of what we do well in higher education. We took it for granted. It's like, oh yeah, we put out graduates, they get jobs, great, check box. We didn't really take our time to describe impact to the public. Now we're in this recovery mode. So that's what podcasting gives the creators, whoever it is, the availability to do.
Thank you for listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence. This episode is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EdUPXE15OFF. Check out the details in the show notes or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
So we're speaking with Joe Sallustio and Elvin Freytes, founders of EdUp, The Experience, a podcast and a podcast network. So gentlemen, the podcast is known for its ongoing series highlighting the perspectives and experiences of university presidents. Over the life of your podcast, what have you found have you found any trends that speak to the major pressures across campuses? And then I want to follow up with major innovations, because Joe, you just mentioned that idea of innovations that are happening as well. So what trends are you seeing in the world of presidents in terms of their major pressures and innovations?
Well, those presidents are crazy. That's the trend I see. Oh, crazy. Do that job. That's a hard ass job. That's the trend. It's a hard job. So
Elvin and I laughing.
Yeah, they're all a little insane. Shout out to the presidents, but you are. It's okay. It's okay. Somebody's got to do it, right? It's hard work. I think there's a couple trends I'd just point out. One, the operating with ambiguity is becoming more and more of a necessity in the leadership of a college leader. Artificial intelligence is the most recent thing to disrupt our world. And I read something on I don't know what I was on, but we as humans don't realize how fast AI is moving. They're talking about in the next 2 years, it's, that AI will be so smart, it will be better than humans at almost everything. And within 3 to 4 years, it will be better than the best human at everything. And we're just not there. So how do you operate in that kind of a world in a business model that is completely opposite of operating with innovation? How do you reconcile those? So we talk about alignment, leadership alignment. How do these college presidents get their leaders aligned on the future with change management and so on? So that's one, right? The ambiguity factor is as a necessity. Two, I would just say that the ability to handle the multiple stakeholders who are all more demanding right? If you look at faculty, staff, donors, you have so many stakeholders that you're serving. It's not a one-sided business model. It's a multiple sides. That's a lot to manage. And hopefully AI makes it easier, but also we're becoming more demanding human beings. Something doesn't go right, we complain. We're okay sitting back, being okay with that anymore. And so we complain. And so your president is your best customer service agent. That's a trend I've seen.
We've all worked our work in higher education. So
it.
We can definitely relate to that. But, I really appreciate this idea of ambiguity. And we also see that too, oftentimes in a larger political sphere, every 4 years, or every so many years, either there's a change at the state house or the national house, or in the composition of those that surround those two offices, and that could bring about another level of this kind of churn of ambiguity. But you're right, Joe. I mean, stakeholders. You talked about alignment, but many times you'll find that there is no alignment among the demands of stakeholders.
That's right.
And so how do you those different interests? Go ahead, Elvin.
No, I just want to say real quick that alignment has been a big word, has been used a lot in our podcast with the 360 plus college university presidents. And one of the things that I've noticed is that happy board, happy president, a diverse board. And I'm talking about, all types of diversity, especially skill set diversity. Having someone who's AI knowledgeable or in the AI sector on your board that knows what's going on. Having someone, obviously, who's a lawyer, finances, all that. So happy board, happy president, happy stakeholder. It trickles down. It goes all the way down to the students, happy students. So that's been a big thing. Let's make sure that we continue to have diverse boards on, again, all types of diversity, right? That are knowledgeable, that are helpful, and that are on the president's side and are happy, and then bring that down to the president, and then it just trickles down. So I think that's a big component that I've noticed. Again, during recording, after recording, that's a big differentiator, and a president is doing extremely well, and the president that, maybe it's not enjoying their job, because it is a hard job. Very, very hard. It's like, I like my job, but I love my board. When you hear that, then they love their job and they're skipping around the campus, having a great old time because they got that support from the board. That's what they need, But when you don't have to have some, oh man, I got another board meeting, I got to prepare all this stuff. They're down already, and then they need to be up for the students, right? Because they're right, Jacob. And students are constantly watching you. They see everything, right? They see your body language, and not only the students, but the staff, the faculty, administrators, all that. So it trickles down. So I think, to me, that's a super key component about what's going on.
Yeah, thank you both for that. So I want to hone in on the idea of EdUp as an experience. So we talked about 45 podcasts, an international reach, a book, a conference. But I do want, I think we said 24 podcasts. Yeah. I want to talk about some of these are in different languages, which is important. But what sparked the expansion? And how do you describe the experience to listeners who tune in to more than one of the networks? So let's say if you have someone, I try to listen to multiple of those, but how would you define the experience when there are different interests in higher education? And of course, look at mine, I'm the anomaly. I'm higher ed and P12 ed. But what is that experience through this expansion?
Yeah, I think for me, if I remember correctly, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't someone pitch us the idea? Wasn't Holly the one that said, hey, I'd like to start a podcast. Can I start a podcast with you guys? And we were like, okay, sure, no problem. So I think it was EdUp EdTech. She wanted to do about education technology. And then I think that's where we were like, wait a minute, why don't we just offer this to other folks and see if they want to start a podcast, and let's just create a network. And so we did. And, we tried different ways to get people to come on and do their own podcasts. And we realized that people want to come on, they want to talk about their expertise. And that, I think, is part of the experience. That you're listening to different experts in their field, in their niche. Everybody has a niche, right? And then they want to bring on, sometimes they do their solo episodes, so like I think you do, and then sometimes you bring in folks who are experts as well, and then it creates thought leadership. And again, I think for everyone listening to all of the different podcasts that we have in the network, it's like, what can I do? Like you said, there's one in Spanish, there's one in Chinese. What is it that I can take away from these different podcasts? It's going to help me in my professional development, and I can probably try to implement at my campus today. And I think that's always been a big win for me. People feel like they are listening to something that's interesting to them, and it's a takeaway. And even if it's just one person listening, that that's it. That's like do that one-to-one. That's what downloads. That's all vanity stuff. But one person can take that away and say, you know what, I've been able to make a difference at my campus, my university, or even K-12, because I learned something within the podcast network, and I was able to take that away. So I think that's super important to me. What do you think, John?
I'd add a couple things. One, there's the visible part of the EdUp Experience network, where there's something for everyone. I mean, I think we got to the point where we were like, who, if you go into the network and there's no podcast on leadership, well, we could have EdUp Accelerated Excellence, where you can hear all about leadership and diversity and equity in higher education. Or you don't have one on, career colleges. Well, we have found somebody that can do EdUp career colleges, So how do we create something for everyone? Because not everyone wants to hear what you have to say. They want to hear about this other topic. And you can't by yourself cover every topic. So that's one. That's the visible part. There is an invisible part of the EdUp Experience that we are very proud of. If we sat down and talked about every person who has since started a podcast from that we've interviewed on EdUp that went off on their own and started a podcast, you wouldn't believe it. And we're talking about people all across the world and different parts of higher education, educational technology, start their own podcast and go, oh yeah, I started a podcast because after I, was on your podcast, I thought I might as well start doing that too. So we have this network, and we see people who meet each other. There's even a story, and this is one that blew our mind, of a college person who is going for a college presidency. This is a true story, validated. And we interviewed him on the podcast, and we dropped his episode while he was in the search process. And when he went for the later stage interviews, the interviewers brought up the episode and had listened to it. And he believes it is one of the reasons why he got hired, because he had this in-depth perspective of himself beyond what the other interviewees had at that time. And he came back to us and said, and I had a conversation. He said, yeah, that helped me so much. I think it's the reason I got hired, So there's just these moments of experience of people that meet each other and go, oh yeah, I was interviewed too. And that just becomes a family almost of experiences that we get to pull on forever.
So what you're saying, and you're not saying it, but I'm putting in your words in your mouth. It's engaging others, but it's also changing lives.
Yep.
In some ways. So yeah, I appreciate it, because I do, as I said earlier, I try to in a rotation, listen to the different podcasts within the network. And I think it also depends on what's happening in my life personally and professionally. But I have found nuggets to take away from different podcasts that I didn't even think about. Sometimes it's, oh, that's kind of a good way of asking a question. The other one is, oh, when I go back to work, this is an idea that I think I want to talk to my team about, because it comes from a different perspective than one in which I sit in on a day-to-day basis, as you mentioned. ID, which is instructional. I think Holly's podcast changed names.
Yep.
But it focuses on instructional design work, and I think at one point it was largely just instructional technology. And I think she does some research around it, like you said, career accreditation, international recruitment. So, and I've even listened to the ones in Chinese, but I do have to wait for the English translation.
You got to wait for the translation. Yeah.
So I want to ask you, so we're having a love fest right now, but what has been the most challenging aspect for you, the two of you working in this medium, and what have you learned? Because I know Elvin talked about just getting started. That's one. Don't wait for all the right equipment and, everything to align perfectly. So beyond getting started, what was perhaps the most challenging aspect, and what have you learned?
I think what's really challenging to a lot of podcasters is to be persistent. I think that is probably the biggest. So many podcasts start every day, every single day, but they don't make it to episode 10. It's like, it's called pod fade. They just fade out, And so being persistent is key, especially if you look at metrics, especially at the beginning. Oh my God, what do we have? Like 4 people listening, 5, then even into the double digits, we got 10. Oh no, that's 4. 4 was like my mom, my dad, and we know who's listening. So yeah, you that's a big issue. Just don't look at those metrics. Keep going, keep practicing. You get better and better and better. Again, our audio was horrible. Maybe the questions weren't that great. Maybe it didn't flow that well. The show notes, all that. So be persistent. Keep learning, keep trying, keep testing. I think that's the biggest challenge. People are afraid too. Sometimes they're just afraid. No, I'm afraid to. Sometimes you gotta look like a big dummy. Sorry, you do it. And then you'll learn and figure it out. It's okay. That's why you do it at the beginning, because no one's listening anyway. So hopefully, as you grow, more people will start to listen, and then you'll be a little bit better, right? So I think to me that's persistence is number one by far. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, that's a good one. My advice is not to listen back to yourself too much. That's why I with so many episodes out, I try to only listen to one a week. Elvin does all the listening, for the most part. But I find that if you're a host, it is very easy to critique yourself. Too easy to critique yourself. Why did I say that? I laughed funny. I said 47 times, and it's too easy to do that. So I just whatever comes out was supposed to come out. Whatever comes out was the flow of the conversation, and I'm okay leaving in the mistakes, because life is messy. And if I'm going to clean it up and give you some polished piece of what, it stinks. And, I want something that's gritty and rough and, like working in higher ed. It's not perfect. It's a train wreck sometimes. And so how do we keep these conversations true to the work that we do? And that's sometimes the hardest thing I find, because I want to clean them up. I want to, oh God, I say interesting. I've noticed I say interesting every time somebody says something. It's my transition word, right? I'll go, oh, that's interesting. Okay, let me ask you another question. And I listen back and I'm like, why did I say interesting? Even what they said, it wasn't that interesting, but I said interesting just to give myself a pause to think about my next question. It's ridiculous, but don't critique yourself.
So Joe, I can relate to that. I heard Ella Fitzgerald say that once that she never listens back to her listens back. Am I saying that right?
Listens back.
Why does that sound so odd when I hear myself say that? But she doesn't listen back to her recordings. She says because, and this is what I understand, she says because if I do it, I'll never have anything produced, because we won't release it, because I'll want to re-record it. And my first guest, Elvin, you know her, Ruth Best, and I kept saying, I think I say too much and I do this too much. She says, Jacob, no, you're fine. And when my best friend listened to it, he says, it just sounds conversational. It sounds like an authentic conversation. So I think it goes back to this notion of authenticity in some ways. So I want you to give me a last word before we give the sort of rundown of the show, where you invite folks to engage with you. What has inspired you the most, and just a dictionary definition, so like the number one definition at the top, so it's a short one. What has inspired you the most, Elvin and Joe, E and J, about Add Up the Experience?
To be honest with you, what has inspired me the most has been when people have actually said to me, I have listened to an episode and I love the Add Up Experience. I listen to it like all the time. It's like, that's so inspiring to me. That keeps me going, to get the reviews, to get people to meet people, because we go to conferences. One time I was at a conference, they were like, hey, you're the Add Up guy. I'm like, oh my God, you know me? Yeah, I listen to it all the time. It's on. That's like, boom. That's it. That's all I need for inspiration. That keeps me going. Persistence keeps me going.
Yeah, I think there's two things. One, that helps, especially when you see people in person and they go, "Oh my gosh, I listened to your podcast. I can't believe it." And you would never think that person would listen to the podcast. But Elvin Freytes is my definition of motivation, because without someone to bounce ideas off of, which is the power of the network, why we created it in the first place, it is easy to not do a podcast. It is easy to lose your motivation to have these conversations. And sometimes it takes somebody to go, just talk to them, just get it in. Let's do one more. Take this guest. They're great. So, we keep each other motivated too. And that's the power of being in the EdUp Experience Network.
Can you share with the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community, how might they engage with either of you, work within the EdUp Experience podcast, or some other ventures that you have in your own professional lives that you think folks should know about and connect with you? So we'll start in reverse order, Joe and then Elvin.
Yeah, so obviously we have an upcoming conference called Higher Ed PodCon. You should check it out at higheredpodcon.com to learn about the first of its kind inaugural and hopefully first annual higher education podcasting event. Never been done before. We'd like to see you there. And then you can follow me on LinkedIn for all content related to higher education and the podcast. And with that, I'll pass it to co-founder of the EdUp Experience, Elvin Freytes, to take us home. And I got to go, you guys. I'll see you soon.
All right, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. So just to close out, edupexperience.com, edupexperience.com has all the shows there. It has the PodCon information there. It has the book there. It has information on me and Joe. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, you can connect through there. So everything funnels to the website, and people can register and be part of our email list to get a weekly email about our happenings and what's going on. So that's where it all starts, is edupexperience.com.
Elvin and Joe, thank you for this opportunity to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
A special thanks to our research assistant for this episode, Emily Bloom, graduate student researcher at Fordham University, studying in the Mental Health Counseling Program. And we want to hear from you. If you have feedback on this or other episodes, contact us online at edupxe.com, that's edupxe.com.
Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience network of educational podcasts. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Radio. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow and share within your network.